I submit to you that it is impossible to believe something, belief meaning to accept a claim as true, if you don't understand it. For example, do you believe do you?
The thing that gets me, though, is it's like you'll believe that somebody walked across water and turned water into wine, and that someone spent 3 days in the stomach of a giant fish, but evolution just blows your mind. The idea here is that we have 3 jars. We have a jar that has existent dice, we have a jar that has supernatural, transcendent dice, and we have a jar of nothing. There's nothing in this jar. And what we did last time is we just sort of mixed them all up, and then I asked Matt, which jar has the real dice?
That one.
Okay. And which jar has the supernatural transcendent dice?
I don't know.
Why not?
Because they look the same to me. But, can I shake it?
Yeah, go for it.
This is not making any noise, so that one must have the supernatural dice.
Okay. But this one doesn't make noise either.
Oh, okay.
Now, let me just say that even if these die had some weird property like water where they were completely, you couldn't see them. Let's say that they weren't visible. If you take these out of the jar and you weigh it, the jar weighs something different than when you put the die in it.
One of these is going to be heavier, I can tell. Go ahead.
And the other thing is, like you said, you shake the jar, and you can hear the jar. If you wanted to know if there was, for example, oxygen in a jar like this, you could light a match and see if it burned or not. It doesn't have to just be visible. There's all kinds of ways that these die manifest.
I think they weigh about this. This one's a little bit heavier, just a bit. Maybe that's the one with the dice.
Okay. The problem with these is that if you have something that you define as something that has no measurable manifestation, and we don't know how to measure it, and there's nothing that you can provide that is how we identify it from nothing. How do you identify it from nothing? It's the same as nothing until you can find a way to demonstrate that it's something.
I would ask God to tell me which of those has this, but unfortunately that spoon is still a spoon. From last week, still a spoon.
Okay.
And so...
But the demonstration here is just to say that if you're going to tell me that something is existing, and then you're going to say that it can exist even though it has no manifesting qualities that can be measured, what you're really saying then is that we can't differentiate something that is not existent from something that exists but has no existent qualities. And so then what happens is I can't tell the thing that manifests and exists from the things that don't manifest and exist, which means that I can't say nothing. There's nothing that I can say doesn't exist because maybe it exists, but it simply doesn't manifest. And at that point, existence now cannot discount anything. All you have to do is say it has no manifesting traits,
right,
no measurable traits, and suddenly existence means nothing.
Yeah.
Because things that have you can't tell things that exist from things that don't exist anymore, and now we have, the term is just completely castrated. So it's kind of sad that the only way you can argue for the existence of something that you believe in is to simply try to argue that existence means nothing.
Yeah.
It's like, no, existence means something. And if you don't think that it means something, think about the idea that manifestation is the attribute that separates the items that exist from those that do not. If you don't agree with it, think about how you live your life, and do you accept that the things that are manifesting in front of you, the things that you can identify and verify and measure, are there, and the things that you don't aren't. You don't come to a screeching halt at a green light because of the car you can't see just ran in front of you. You know, the invisible car that drove in front of you doesn't make you slam your brakes on. And the car that does cut you off at that light, you will slam your brakes on because it manifests. You live your life every day identifying things that are and rejecting things that aren't. And yet when it comes to something as simple as saying, you know, is there anything in this jar? If I say it's supernatural and transcendent, suddenly, okay, well, that's this, and it's logical to believe in it.
I changed what's in those jars now. I took the supernatural transcendent dice out. One of them now has a soul, and the other one has Zeus's little finger.
You're messing up my model.
Here,
Put it back.
I'm going to dump Zeus's little finger. Okay. I think it's out.
Okay. Yeah, if a supernatural existent item does not meet the criteria we use to justify existent items, what becomes our basis for labeling anything as existent? Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Too much.
Okay.
It's the single most perfect explanation of this. When she called to tell me she would do this on the show or sent me an email, I was like, yeah, it's perfect.
No, it is. And so the thing with this, I'm not going to belabor this any longer because we actually did this part of it on the last show I was on.
Great.
So if you want to go back and look and see more of that. The next thing that you can do with this fallacy model is you take these two jars, set them aside. You take this jar, and I say to Matt, guess how many die are in jar 1?
21.
Okay. I'm going to guess 150,000.
Wait, I miss. Talking about dice, right?
Yeah, in the jar.
Okay.
You're saying 21, I'm saying 150,000.
Want to put some money on it?
What this part of the fallacy model demonstrates is that, Matt, do you know how many die are in this jar?
Nope.
Okay. In the theory of the model, neither of us know how many die are in this jar. So, does it make sense, since neither of us really know how many die are in this jar, that any quantity guessed is just as valid as any other quantity?
No.
Why not?
Because one of them's just batshit crazy.
All right, but why?
Because of what we do know about dice and that jar, we know that one of the guesses is beyond the possible limits of what could possibly be in there.
Right.
There's
It is
clearly 100 million.
Just because we don't know how many die are in this jar does not mean that every guess is just as valid. Some guesses are completely ridiculous.
Yep.
Because you do know something about jars, and you know something about dice, and as long as you have some parameters in place, it is ridiculous to guess there's 150,000 die in this jar.
I'm gonna possibly get ahead of you.
Go ahead.
Can you grab one of the empty ones?
Sure.
No, not the empty, not that one. The one with the actual supernatural transcendent.
Okay,
dice.
here you go.
This has the supernatural transcendent dice in it.
Right.
Guess how many are in this one?
I don't have a clue. Should I take a guess? Do you want me to just wing it?
Guess.
1,050,000.
And I'm going to guess 30. Our guesses are now equally valid.
Right.
Because the information that we would use to make our guess is no longer applicable.
Right.
Because we don't know anything at all about transcendent supernatural dice. There could be 1 million of them in there. And the funny thing is that when the people make these arguments with regard to religion, they take that as a proud, defining moment of, I believe there's 1 million transcendent supernatural dice in here, and I also believe that I don't know anything or completely understand those dice. What?
And the guy over here that says that there's only 50, he's not a true believer in the transcendent dice.
Yeah,
he's got, that's error.
Iceberg. He looked in and saw 50 and stopped looking.
Right.
I mean, those are the types of arguments you get.
So when you get into something like, I don't know, the beginning, I can tell you how many there are. There's the beginning, whatever, universal origins. And people will say, it's just as reasonable to say a God did it as to not say a God did it. It's like, well, we do actually know some things about the universe. In fact, I'm part of the universe. And I know some things about myself. So it's not like nobody knows anything about the universe. You live in it, you work in it, you deal with matter and energy every single day. We do know quite a bit about it. And there's certain things that can be, understood about it that we have a good grasp of, and probably things that are more theoretical, but the fact is, it doesn't make any wild guess about universal origins suddenly credible just because you can say, well, nobody really knows what happened before the Big Bang.
Right.
So therefore, it could be Zeus. Well, Yeah, but there could be 150,000 die in here too. You know?
In that case, though, and I think this actually touches on a slightly different. I can still see part of whatever the hell is on that figure. In that case,
Broadcasting live from Mars.
I think this touches on a slightly different aspect of this, in which, for example, with regard to Big Bang cosmology,
Sure.
The only fair answer is to say we don't know. And so when somebody asserts an answer or two, like, for example, God or Yahweh, those two answers I wouldn't say are equally probable, but there's a distinct difference between which answer is more accurate, I don't know, or God.
Right.
And in this case, the I don't know case, I'm saying, I don't know. I'm not even going to be able to give you too much in the way of characteristics before this. This is something that is actually beyond our ability to really assess. In the future,
right,
it may be possible. Maybe we'll learn something new about science that will give us the ability to extrapolate further than the point time, etc. But when I say God did it, I mean something by God. I'm not just saying I don't know. I'm saying I know, and it's this thing right here. And I have some definition of it. It is then the case where we're not just talking about something completely abstract that we don't have any concept of. The person making the assertion has in their mind some concept, some list of characteristics that apply, that fit the label God. In that case, you are required, if we're going to have any conversation, to tell me what those characteristics are. Because if in the course of assessing those characteristics, we find that some of them are logically contradictory, we can eliminate that as a possibility even if we don't know anything else about it. Sure. And if you come up with characteristics that contradict other known aspects of reality, then we can...
Well, the other thing, though, is when you have a thing like a God that has no manifesting or measurable characteristics, how do you factor that into your theory or your equation?
Yeah.
How do you use the information that is not there? I mean, I don't know. It's like I had a quote here from Austin Klein's site. All such statements are causal shorthand for a more elaborate and technical statement. This alleged entity has no place in any scientific equations, plays no role in any scientific explanations, cannot be used to predict any events, does not describe anything or force that has yet been detected, and there are no models of the universe in which its presence is either required, productive, or useful.
Yep.
I mean, what are you talking about? You're saying this did it. This created the universe. Well, you've just given me no information. So anyway, how many die are in the jar?
I said 21. I'm counting them. I'm not just taking your word for it.
I know. But you know there's not 150,000.
Yeah.
That's not even debatable. You know, if anybody would believe me...
Technically, you could debate it, but
right.
We'd have a lot of fun with that.
It's not reasonably debatable.
Yes.
Any reasonable person would know there cannot be 150,000 die in here.
Not 150,000 dice.
Those die. These are the real die we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that is important to the model, is that we're talking specifically about die.
Yeah.
These die.
We have defined die as
those.
One of those objects that's in it.
And let's see. Okay, this is where I hope I don't make a
And
mess.
I don't even need to know what they're made of.
This is something else you can do with the fallacy model.
Okay.
There should be 25. Okay. What are the odds that they would fall exactly as they did?
Holy crap. I'm not good enough at math to figure that out. Actually, do you just mean what numbers are up or their actual positions?
Their position counts. Position counts. This is like die 1, die 2, die 3, die 4, which throws the odds way up.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you first brought this
I actually started calculating this, like when I first did this. And I said, like, okay, you got the first die, and it has 6 positions. Then you have the second die, which has 6 positions on the 6 positions. So now you're up to 36 positions.
No. That's only calculating what number is up. I'm talking about in this particular arrangement, the distance, the spacing,
I was talking position and
the orientation.
All right. I was looking at it in terms of like if you had 2 die and you get like a 1 and a 2,
right.
that it's not the same as a 2 and a 1. That's what I was calling position, like die 1, die
6 to the 25th, I don't know.
So it gets huge.
Yeah.
And so there's just astronomically huge odds, and you can just add more die and make it just more and more incredible. So the question here is, does the reality that there are very low odds that they would have fallen exactly as they did indicate that the outcome was impacted in some way by an intelligent designer?
No. There sure are a lot of 5s out there.
Threes I'm seeing too. I'm thinking there must be something to that, right? I mean, otherwise, how could all those 5s have come up?
Yahtzee.
There you go. If I accept that the odds of the die falling as they did are too great to have been random, does that impart any more purpose or meaning to my existence than I had before?
No.
If it does so only in my mind, which it would, because there's no real reason it would, wasn't the capacity to overlay meaning onto an external reality always within my head, whether or not the die land without aid from a supernatural intelligence? So in other words, if I interpret this to be the product of a supernatural intelligence that created it all, still, whatever it means to me is whatever it means to me. And my life still has whatever meaning I impart. And if I find out later that it really was just random roll of dice, that there was no intelligence behind the outcome, does that mean I can't have meaning now? If I learned that it wasn't an intelligently designed roll, that means I created the meaning previously in my own head.
And yet the meaning didn't change.
Well, it can change, but the point is,
but you're the one
I made up the meaning before. So whatever meaning I thought I had was really out of my own mind, even when I believed there was an intelligent designer behind it. If there really isn't, I'm making that meaning up. And so after I find out there isn't one, my life can have just as much made-up meaning now as it did before. There's no reason that my life must be stripped of meaning because that aspect of my view changes. Anyway, this is part of what you were talking about before, and that's why I brought up templates.
Yeah.
About the card template. If you weren't familiar with the game of poker and someone dealt you that royal flush, it would be meaningless to you. You might see the pattern of hearts, or, it just depends. If you've never seen cards before and you don't know what they look like, it's the first time you've looked at a deck of cards, you don't even know that there aren't hearts. You just got a handful of hearts. According to what you know, it could all be hearts. The whole deck could be hearts.
Right.
So you have no idea about the meaning behind it unless you already have a preconceived template of what is a good poker hand. And so if we had a template laid out on the table, and then these die hit, and it was exactly like the template on our first roll, that would be pretty amazing.
It'd be whatever the odds are.
Right.
Yeah.
Because now we got a template.
But it's still possible.
Yes, it's possible, but we have a template.
Mm-hmm.
So we're saying, what would be the odds of rolling this? And then we roll it. It's like, holy crap, we really rolled that. I would be blown away if I was able to roll that on a first try. But the thing that gets me is, without a template, there's no, the full house is not significant if there's no full house template in your brain. And if there's no template laying on this table to match these die, any roll is just as good as any other roll. It's just as many odds to roll this pattern as to roll this pattern. There's nothing significant about one pattern or the other except in your brain.
Right.
And that is something I come across a lot with ID, is the idea that because things rolled out the way they did, suddenly that means there's a God.
The interesting thing about this is you can actually use this for a slightly different example, and I promise we're going to get the call soon because there's only like 20 minutes left in the show. But pick a number from 1 to 6.
7.
What? 7? 2. We're going to roll all 2s. All right. 2, 2, 2, 2.
Yeah, there's one.
2.
There's a couple.
2. I beat the odds for a number of 2s. Now I'm going to take everything that's not a 2. There are 6 of them.
No, there's 7.
No, there's 6.
There's 7.
All right, there's 7. He predicted the number of 2s without even
I'm
realizing it.
totally wigging it.
So now we roll again, and there's, well, look at this.
Wow.
I'm beating the odds really well. There's 2, 2, there's
Over
another
here.
2, and another 2, and look at all the 6s in there.
Yeah, yeah.
There's like 8 6s in there. Well, all right, so now we're getting closer to being all 2. So that's 2 rolls.
Yeah, yeah. Doing good.
Uh-oh. 2, 2, 2. That's 3 rolls. And you can keep doing this. And hopefully, everybody watching can see. That's a 2 and a 2. That it won't take entirely too many rolls by this progressive system. So you get to the point where all of these dice are 2s.
There's
Wow,
a couple
1,
2s.
2. There's another one. We are down to just 5 dice. That's all, that's what, that's 5 rolls or 6 rolls. It's not a perfect analogy, or it's no 2s. And I'm not going to roll these forever because it's noisy.
Okay, but you get the idea. Eventually you'll roll all 2s.
The way evolution works, but it's kind of close because it's not like many people would provide a caricature of evolution, as Frank did this morning, I think this thing just spontaneously happened. That's not it. I kept the good traits. I kept these particular things and re-rolled the others, and some of them come up 2s. I might even have grabbed some 2s with them.
What this is the plane goes down and 200 people die, but a baby survived.
Yeah.
And so the baby survived, and so, wow, God is awesome. But the 250 people or whatever that died, you just ignore those. God had nothing to do with that. He just saved the baby. But those dead people, that's what happens. The thing here now is we're going to take one, and I'll hurry this up because it doesn't take too long. And we're going to take, which one had the supernatural die?
The one by the closest to the mug.
Okay.
Sorry.
So we're going to take the supernatural transcendent die, and everyone in this room is going to think really hard to ask the supernatural transcendent die to influence the roll of this dice. Okay. I got one die in my hand, and you're going to pick a number, and we're going to see if the transcendent die do it.
2.
Okay.
I almost said 3.
Now wait a second.
3 was the first thing I thought of. Maybe it heard me
let's
before.
see. According to this, if I don't get the desired outcome, it's not really evidence that it didn't work. It simply means that the transcendent die know better than we do what we should have rolled.
Well, yeah. Or it could have been that it heard what I was thinking.
And also, I can't test or control what the supernatural die actually do. They're they have their own agenda.
Let me ask it again.
Okay, yeah, sometimes you have to...
supernatural die.
Be really contrite.
Give me a 5.
Tell it that you're not worthy.
I humble myself before your jarredness.
Oh, no.
6. He went up. He gave me more than I asked for. It's a miracle.
Now, wait a second. You're not being, I'm not feeling the love.
Sincere?
I think, come on. Call it glorious and,
You are the hottest transcendent die ever.
That's what it took. It's female. It's a goddess.
You have to flatter it.
It's a goddess.
Seems to be what happens with a lot of religions. You have to get into this sycophantic.
So that's the thing. If you really, really want it, and it really is what's best for you, and you keep asking the transcendent die, you will get the thing that's best. It might not be what you think, and it might take a couple of, attempts, and you might have to ask and ask, but you'll get what you're asking for if it's the right thing for you. If it's not, you won't. And then, really quickly, the rest of these aren't really fallacy models, but it's just quick questions. If you don't believe that there are supernatural transcendent die in this jar, would you change your mind if I told you a story about how wonderful they are?
They're hot, believe me. They just hooked me up.
What if I relayed to you that other people believe that there are supernatural die in this jar? Does that change what's in the jar?
No.
And if I tell you that there's, 100,000 people that believe there are transcendent die in that jar, does it change what's actually in the jar?
Nope.
Okay.
And it doesn't change my perception.
But wait, I feel really strongly. I just know in my heart that there are supernatural transcendent die in that jar. Does it change what's in that jar?
Nope.
Okay.
And it doesn't change what I think about what's in
Does it in any way affect the reality of whether or not that item is actually in there? If I get 100 other people to agree, if I convince you that there's supernatural die in that jar, does it change what's in that jar?
Nope.
Okay. What if I tell you that after you die, you're going to go to a heavenly Las Vegas where you will win at every game and eat great buffets for all eternity? Will you then agree that there are supernatural transcendent dice in this jar?
No, but that is the best heaven I've ever heard of.
Well, it's dice, so I did a Vegas theme. What if I tell you that not believing is going to result in your worst nightmare for eternity after you die? Will that make you believe that there's supernatural transcendent dice in that jar?
No.
Would it change the fact that there are or are not supernatural transcendent dice in that jar?
No.
What if I point out that you don't know everything? Does that make you believe there's supernatural transcendent dice in that jar?
No.
What if I accuse you of being closed-minded? Does that make you believe there's supernatural transcendent dice in that jar?
Nope.
What if I tell you that only bad people don't believe in the supernatural dice? Are you convinced now?
I'm bad to the bone, and no.
If I could do something that you couldn't explain, and I say it's because the supernatural transcendent die gave me the power to do it, are you going to believe that there's something in that jar?
Nope.
And if I could do something that was really wild and hard to explain or even impossible to explain, and I believed it was because supernatural transcendent die in that jar gave me the power, does that change the fact of what is or is not in that jar?
Absolutely not.
Okay. And I think that's all of it.
Sweet.
And if anybody has other things, if you want to think of things that you can do with these and want to write in and let me know what else you can do with the fallacy model, I'm open. Because I think it's kind of an interesting model.
And by the way, I've patented this. No one else is allowed to sell supernatural transcendent jars of supernatural transcendent items without giving me royalties.
I'm going to say feel free to use this model and let me know if you think that if you can think of other arguments or counter apologetics that can be demonstrated with this model, let me know.
You can sell the jars for the price of the jars. You can't mark them up because they contain supernatural transcendent items.
Okay.
Even really nice ones. Just saying.
Okay, that's all I got.